The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. It floated in the middle of space, a station bigger than most moons, built by 17 alien species working together over thousands of years. Every important decision in the galaxy was made here. Today, they would decide what to do with humanity. Admiral Daniel Hayes walked through the tall doors with his back straight and his eyes forward. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his face from years of service. His uniform was dark blue with silver buttons, pressed and clean despite the long journey to reach this place. Beside him walked Commander Laura Bennett, a woman of 40 with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had served with Daniel for 15 years and trusted him completely. The alien delegates towered above them as holographic images, each one 20 feet tall. The Sindari were snake-like creatures with scales that changed color based on their feelings. Right now, most of them glowed a cold blue, showing their disapproval. The Vethrani were made of living crystal, their bodies shining with inner light. The Korath were giants covered in natural armor, their faces impossible to read. 14 other species filled the remaining seats, all of them old, all of them powerful, and all of them looking down at the two humans with something between fear and disgust. High Arbiter Vethros floated at the center of the chamber. He was the oldest of the Vethrani, his crystal body pulsing with pale light. He had led the council for 300 years, longer than humanity had known about alien life. Admiral Daniel Hayes of the Human Coalition, Vethros said, his voice filling the chamber like thunder. You stand before the Galactic Council to hear our judgment. Daniel stepped forward. I am here, High Arbiter. 300 years ago, your species discovered faster than light travel. 250 years ago, you made first contact with the Sindari hegemony. Since that time, you have spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. You now occupy 47 worlds across 12 star systems. Your population has grown from 8 billion to 18 billion. Your ships travel through space that belonged to us for millions of years before your kind existed. We have followed every law, Daniel said calmly. Every world we settled was empty. Every trade route we used was open to all species. We have done nothing wrong. Wrong is not the question, Vethros replied. Balance is the question. The Council exists to keep order in the galaxy. Your species does not understand order. You grow too fast. You want too much. You do not know how to stop reaching for more. Ambassador Kirol of the Sindari uncoiled from her platform, her scales shifting to angry red. She was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a poisonous flower. I have studied your history, she said, her voice smooth and cold. Your species is very young. In your short time on your home world, you fought thousands of wars against each other. You built weapons that could destroy your entire planet. You poisoned your own air and water. Any other species would have died. But you did not die. You survived. You grew stronger from every disaster. She paused, tasting the air with her forked tongue. This is what we fear. A species that cannot be destroyed is a species that cannot be controlled. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. We came to the stars looking for friends. We joined your council. We traded fairly. We fought only when attacked. What else do you want from us? General Karth Varn spoke next, his deep voice rumbling like an earthquake. We want you removed from the core systems, not killed. The Council does not murder entire species, but relocated, sent to a place where your endless hunger for growth will not threaten the established order of the galaxy. Daniel felt his heart grow cold. You are banishing us. We are relocating you, Vethros corrected. To the outer rim, there are many unclaimed systems there. You may settle them as you wish. You may grow as large as you want, but you will not return to the core worlds. Your trade routes will be cut. Your colonies here will be given to other species. You have 30 standard cycles to leave. Lara grabbed Daniel's arm. He could feel her fingers shaking. The outer rim is a death trap, Daniel said. The space there is unstable. Stars explode without warning. Radiation levels are deadly. You are sending 18 billion people to die. We are giving you a chance, Vethros replied. More than many here wanted to give. Some voted to simply destroy your fleets and burn your colonies. Be thankful for our mercy. Daniel looked around the chamber at the faces of the alien delegates. Some would not meet his eyes. Others stared back with cold satisfaction. A few seemed uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to speak against the decision. You are making a terrible mistake, Daniel said. We wanted to be your partners. We wanted to share the galaxy with you. And you throw us away like garbage because you are afraid of what we might become. Fear keeps us alive, Kirill said. Something your species has never understood. Daniel stood in silence for a long moment. Lara was waiting for him to fight, to argue, to do something. But he could see the truth clearly. The decision was made. The votes were cast. 17 species had agreed that humanity was too dangerous to keep around. There was nothing more to say. We will comply, Daniel finally said. We will take our people and leave your precious core systems. But remember this day, all of you. Remember that you had the chance to stand beside humanity and you chose to push us away. One day, you will wish you had made a different choice. And on that day, remember that we warned you. He turned and walked toward the exit, Lara following close behind. The great doors closed behind them, cutting off the cold light of the council chamber. What happens now? Lara asked as they walked toward their shuttle. Daniel stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, past the safe trade routes and wealthy colonies, lay the outer rim, a place of dying stars and broken worlds. A place where the elder races sent things they wanted to forget. Now we survive, Daniel said. We take our people to the rim. We build new homes on worlds no one else wants. We adapt and grow, just like we always have. And after that? Daniel turned away from the window. His face was hard, but there was fire in his eyes. After that, we make them remember why they were afraid of us in the first place. They boarded their shuttle and flew away from the council station. Behind them, the elder races celebrated their victory, certain that they had solved the human problem forever. They had no idea that they had just created the very thing they feared most. The first year in the outer rim was a nightmare. People died every day from radiation poisoning, toxic air, accidents, and dangerous environments, and diseases that human medicine had never seen before. Food supplies ran low. Clean water became more valuable than gold. Machines broke down faster than they could be repaired. Every morning brought new problems, and every night brought the fear that tomorrow would be worse. But humans had always been good at surviving the impossible. The planet they named Haven was the worst place anyone could imagine trying to live. Volcanoes erupted without warning, sending rivers of molten rock across the surface. Ion storms swept through the atmosphere every few days, destroying anything electronic that was not heavily shielded. The air was filled with particles that burned the lungs and made breathing painful even with filters. No alien species in the galaxy would have considered settling there. Humans built their first city in the crater of a dead volcano, using the natural rock walls as protection against the storms. They dug deep into the ground, creating tunnels and chambers where the radiation could not reach. They built air filtration systems from spare parts and imagination. They collected water from ice that formed in the shadowed areas where the dim sun never reached. When the active volcanoes threatened their settlements, they learned to predict eruptions by studying the ground tremors. When the storms came, they built shelters that could survive winds strong enough to flip a cargo ship. When the food ran out, They learned which of the local plants could be made safe to eat, and which ones were poison. Dr. Samantha Cross was a scientist who had studied terraforming on one of the core world colonies. Terraforming was the process of changing a dead world into a living one, and it usually took hundreds or even thousands of years. Humanity did not have that kind of time. They needed results immediately. Working from a small laboratory built into the side of a cliff, Samantha developed new methods that no one had ever tried before. She created bacteria that could eat toxic chemicals and turn them into harmless substances. She engineered plants that could grow in radiation and produce oxygen 50 times faster than normal trees. She found ways to make dead soil fertile again in months instead of centuries. Her partner, engineer Derek Palmer, focused on building things quickly and cheaply. He designed modular structures that could be put together in days using materials found anywhere. His buildings were not beautiful, but they were strong enough to survive earthquakes, storms, and anything else the rim could throw at them. Within 5 years, every human settlement used his designs. The work never stopped. There were no weekends, no holidays, no time for rest. Every person had a job, and every job was important. Children went to school in the morning and helped with construction in the afternoon. Old people who could not do heavy work taught skills and kept records of what had happened. Everyone contributed because everyone understood that their survival depended on each other. Admiral Daniel Hayes, now in his late 60s, became the leader of this new society. He had never wanted political power, but the people trusted him because he had led them through the exile. He created the Parliament of the United Rim Territories, a government that gave every settlement a voice in important decisions. "We are not just trying to stay alive anymore," Daniel told the first meeting of the Parliament. "We are building something new, something that belongs to us alone. The Council took our homes, but they could not take our future. We will make that future with our own hands." 20 years after the banishment, Haven had transformed from a death trap into a real city. 4 million people lived there, working in factories, farms, hospitals, and schools. Other colonies had grown across the rim, each one adapting to its local environment, each one contributing to the strength of the whole. The old divisions that had separated humans began to disappear. In the core systems, people had thought of themselves as being from different planets, different countries, different backgrounds. In the rim, there was only one identity that mattered. They were all human. They were all survivors. They were all part of the same struggle. Trade routes connected the scattered colonies, maintained by pilots who flew through the most dangerous space in the galaxy. Navigation in the rim was incredibly difficult. The safe travel lanes used in the core systems did not exist here. Every journey required skill, courage, and a willingness to take risks that would have terrified most other species. The pilots who made these runs became heroes, celebrated in songs and stories throughout human space. Mining crews discovered resources that the elder races had never known existed. Strange metals that could conduct energy without any loss. Crystals that could store enormous amounts of information. Elements that did not appear on any periodic table. The Council had sent humanity to what they thought was a worthless wasteland. Instead, they had sent them to a treasure chest that no one else had been brave enough to open. Shipyards began operating in orbit around the most stable planets. At first, they built simple cargo ships and transports. But as the years passed, they started building warships. Not because humanity wanted to fight, but because they remembered what had happened before. They would never again be helpless. They would never again let others decide their fate. Admiral Ryan Cole, who had protected the evacuation convoys all those years ago, now commanded the growing Rim Defense Fleet. The ships he built were not elegant like the vessels of the core worlds. They were rough, practical, and deadly. They were designed by people who understood that survival was more important than looking good. "Our ships are ugly," Ryan said at the launch of a new battleship, "but they work. That is all that matters out here." 40 years after the banishment, humanity had become stronger than anyone had expected. The Rim had not broken them. It had made them harder, tougher, and more determined. They had built cities on worlds that should have been impossible to settle. They had created technology that solved problems the elder races had never faced. They had proven that they could survive anything. Governor Nathan Price, who had said goodbye to New Austin so long ago, now led one of the most successful colonies in the Rim. His daughter Megan had become a brilliant engineer, designing systems that saved thousands of lives. The scared teenager who had helped load shuttles during the evacuation was now a leader in her own right. And when humanity looked toward the core systems, toward the council that had thrown them away, they did not see enemies. They saw beings who had made a terrible mistake and would someday have to face the consequences. That day was coming sooner than anyone knew. The evacuation began before the council's announcement was even finished. Word spread across human space at the speed of light, carried by communication systems that connected 47 worlds. 18 billion people learned at almost the same moment that they had 30 days to leave everything behind and travel to the most dangerous part of the galaxy. Captain Ryan Cole stood on the bridge of his ship, the carrier Defiance, watching endless lines of civilian transports entering the departure lanes. The Defiance was one of the largest military vessels humanity had ever built, capable of carrying 5,000 crew and escorting hundreds of smaller ships. Today it served as a guardian, protecting the flood of refugees from whatever dangers might come. "Status report," Ryan said to his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Katie Marsh. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back tight, and she had not slept in 3 days. "We have processed 400,000 civilians from this sector," Katie replied, her voice rough with exhaustion. "Another million are waiting. The Council patrol ships are getting more aggressive. They say we are moving too slowly. We still have 20 days left in their deadline." They do not seem to care about their own deadline. "Sir," as if to prove her point, the tactical display lit up with warning signals. 3 Council patrol ships had dropped down at faster than light travel near the rear of the convoy. They were Sindari vessels, sleek and fast, armed with weapons that could cut through civilian transports like knives through paper. "They are ordering the transport Hope's Light to increase speed," the communications officer reported. "They are threatening to fire if it does not comply." Ryan felt his hands tighten into fists. The Hope's Light was carrying 40,000 refugees, mostly families with young children. Its engines were already running at maximum power. There was nothing more it could do. "Move us between the patrol ships and the transport," Ryan ordered. "Open a channel to the Sindari commander." The view screen flickered, and the face of a Sindari captain appeared. Her scales were bright orange, a color that meant she was looking for a fight. "Human vessel, you will not interfere with Council enforcement," she hissed. "The transport is moving as fast as it can," Ryan replied, keeping his voice calm and steady. "It is carrying children. You will give them time. We will give you nothing. The Council has ordered humanity to leave. Every moment you stay is an insult to our authority." Ryan leaned forward in his chair. "Then let me make something clear. The Defiance has 40 missile tubes and enough firepower to turn your little patrol into floating scrap metal. We are leaving, just like you ordered. But we will not be rushed. Back off, or I will personally explain to your High Arbiter why 3 of his ships no longer exist." The Sindari captain hissed again, her scales flushing deep purple with rage. For a long moment, the 2 ships faced each other across the empty space. Then, slowly, the patrol ships turned and moved away. "They are withdrawing," Katie reported. For now. But they will be back with more ships. We need to move faster. Across human space, similar confrontations happened every day. Council forces harassed the evacuation convoys, seized property that refugees were trying to bring with them, and made the departure as painful as possible. It was not enough to exile humanity. They wanted to humiliate them as well. On the colony world called New Austin, Governor Nathan Price watched the last sunset he would ever see on this planet. He had lived here for his entire 60 years of life. His grandparents had been among the first settlers. His parents had built the main hospital. His own children had been born in the house that stood behind him, now empty and dark. The twin suns of the New Austin system sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. It was the most beautiful sunset Nathan had ever seen, and he knew he would never see another one like it. Father. His daughter Megan appeared beside him. She was 16 years old, strong and smart, and too young to remember Earth or any other world, but this one. The last transport is ready. We need to go. Nathan nodded slowly. He looked at the city he had governed for 20 years. The schools where children had learned to read. The parks where families had picnicked on sunny days. The farms that had fed a growing population. All of it would be abandoned. All of it would be given to strangers who had done nothing to earn it. Will we ever come back? Megan asked. Nathan put his arm around his daughter. I do not know. Maybe not us. Maybe not our children. But someday, someone will stand here again and remember that humans built this place. That has to be enough. They walked to the landing pad where the last shuttle waited. Nathan took one final look at his home, then stepped aboard. The engines roared, and the shuttle lifted into the darkening sky. Below them, New Austin grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck of light among millions of other stars. The journey to the outer rim took weeks for most ships. The safe travel lanes that connected to core worlds did not extend that far. Ships had to navigate through unstable regions where space itself seemed to twist and bend. They had to avoid dying stars that could explode at any moment. They had to chart their own paths through space that no one had ever mapped. Many ships were lost along the way. Engine failures left families stranded in empty space. Navigation errors sent vessels into asteroid fields. The simple dangers of unexplored territory claimed lives that should have been safe in homes that no longer existed. Every loss was felt throughout the fleet. Every name was spoken aloud and remembered, but humanity kept moving forward. There was no other choice. Behind them was hatred and exile. Ahead of them was the unknown. The only direction that mattered was forward. Admiral Daniel Hayes traveled with the main fleet, his flagship at the front of the convoy. He slept only a few hours each night and spent every waking moment coordinating the massive evacuation. Commander Lavra Bent worked beside him, managing the endless details that kept millions of people alive and moving. On the 20th day of the journey, the first human ships reached the system that would become their new home. It was not a welcoming place. The star was old and dim, giving off barely enough light to see by. The planets were barren rocks covered in dust and ice. Radiation levels were higher than any human colony had ever tolerated before. This is it, Daniel said, looking at the dim star on his view screen. It is not much, Lavra admitted. No, but our ancestors started with even less. A single planet with limited resources and an atmosphere that tried to kill them every day. They survived. They built civilizations. They reached the stars. We can do the same thing here. Behind them, the refugee fleet continued to arrive. Millions of people carrying nothing but their skills, their hope, and their determination. The council had sent them here to die. Instead, they'd come here to live. The last human ship left the core systems 3 days early. The elder races celebrated. confident that they would never hear from humanity again. They raised their glasses and congratulated themselves on solving a problem that had worried them for generations. They had no idea how wrong they were. The message arrived on a quiet morning, 43 years after humanity had been forced to leave the core systems. It came through communication channels that had been silent for decades. Carrying the official seal of the Galactic Council, President Claire Donovan read the message alone in her office, looking out at the city that had grown around the government buildings on Haven. She was 52 years old, born on a refugee transport during the long journey from the core worlds. She had never walked on the planets her parents had called home. Everything she knew about the Council came from history books and the bitter stories told by the older generation. The message was not long, but its contents changed everything. The Vorn Collective had awakened. The Vorn were machines created by a species that had died millions of years ago. No one remembered who had built them or why. They had slept in the darkest corners of the galaxy, silent and still, waiting for something to wake them up. Something had finally done so, and now they were spreading through Council space like a disease. Their ships were black structures that seemed to swallow light. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They did not offer surrender. They simply arrived at a world, destroyed everything on it, harvested its resources, and moved on to the next target. The elder races, comfortable in their power after millions of years of peace, had no idea how to fight an enemy that did not care about diplomacy or treaties. High Arbiter Vethros himself had written the message. His words were not proud or commanding like they had been all those years ago in the council chamber. They were desperate. The Vorn threaten all life in the galaxy, he had written. We cannot stop them alone. We ask humanity to put aside old grievances and stand with us against this common enemy. The survival of every species depends on our ability to work together. Claire read the message 3 times, then called an emergency meeting of the Parliament. The representatives arrived from across the rim, their faces appearing on screens throughout the assembly hall. Some were young, born after the exile, and knowing nothing but the hard life of the frontier. Others were old, survivors who still carried the pain of being cast out from their homes. The Council has asked for our help, Claire announced, showing the message to everyone present. After 43 years of silence, they finally remember that we exist. Admiral Marcus Webb rose to speak. He was 60 years old, tall and weathered, with scars on his hands from years of working on ships and weapons. He had been born in the Rim and had devoted his life to building the fleet that protected humanity. They banished our parents, Marcus said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. They harassed our convoys during the evacuation. They celebrated when they thought we would die in this wasteland. And now they want us to save them. What do you suggest we do? Asked an elderly representative from one of the farming colonies. Let them burn? Yes, said several voices from around the chamber. No, said others. The debate went back and forth for hours. Some argued that helping the council would be a betrayal of everyone who had suffered during the exile. The dead deserve better than to see their descendants rescue the very beings who had condemned them. Others argued that refusing to help would make humanity just as bad as those who had thrown them away. Revenge was not justice. Cruelty was not strength. Claire listened to every argument without interrupting. When the voices finally grew quiet, she stood up to speak. I understand the anger in this room, she said. I feel it too. My mother died during the journey to the Rim. She never got to see what we built here. I have no love for the council or the species that voted to exile us. She paused, looking around at the faces watching her. But I also know what kind of people we want to be. We spent 40 years building a civilization based on cooperation, sacrifice, and caring for each other. If we turn our backs on billions of innocent beings, we become something different. We become the same as those who abandoned us. The chamber was silent for a long moment. There is another reason to consider, Claire continued. If the Vorn destroy the Council, they will not stop there. They will keep spreading until they reach the rim. We can fight them now with allies, or we can fight them later, alone. I know which option gives us a better chance. The vote was held the next day. It was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. We are not doing this for the Council, Claire announced in a message broadcast across the rim. We are doing this for ourselves. We will show the galaxy what humanity truly is. Not refugees. Not exiles. Not victims. We are people who remember our values, even when others forget theirs. Admiral Marcus Webb took command of the relief fleet. 300 warships gathered at the border between the Rim and Council space. They were not the graceful vessels of the elder races. They were weapons forged in hardship, crewed by men and women who had grown up fighting for survival every single day. All ships. This is Admiral Webb, Marcus transmitted as the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace. We are about to go into space that our people have not seen in over 40 years. Some of you have never known anything but the Rim. Others remember the core worlds and everything we lost there. Whatever your history, remember who we are. We built an empire in the most hostile place in the galaxy. We turned certain death into a thriving civilization. The Vorn think they cannot be stopped. They have never met anything like us. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving the Rim behind. When they emerged in Council territory, they found the galaxy in chaos. Vorn ships were everywhere, destroying stations, harvesting planets, and crushing any resistance. Council fleets fought bravely but uselessly. Their outdated tactics, no match for an enemy that learned and adapted after every battle. The human ships entered the war like wolves attacking a herd. They were faster, more aggressive, and completely unpredictable. The Vorn, designed to fight enemies who followed rules, had no idea how to respond to attackers who seemed to have no rules at all. The war for the galaxy had begun. And for the first time since the invasion started, the machines were no longer winning. The war against the Vorn lasted 7 years. It was the bloodiest and most destructive conflict in the history of the galaxy, and it changed everything. Human tactics, developed during decades of fighting for survival in the Outer Rim, proved devastating against the machine intelligence. The Council fleets followed careful plans and established procedures, doing the same things they had done for thousands of years. Human commanders threw away the rulebook entirely. They changed strategies in the middle of battle. They took risks that seemed insane. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible. The Vorn had been built to fight predictable enemies. Humans were anything but predictable. Captain Ben Lawson became a legend during the 3rd year of the war. His squadron of small, fast ships flew straight into the heart of Vorn territory, passing through defensive lines that should have stopped them. They found a massive processing station where the machines were converting entire planets into raw materials for their fleet. Ben and his pilots attacked without hesitation, destroying the station before the Vorn could respond. Half of his ships were lost in the battle, but the damage to the enemy production was so severe that they never fully recovered. Commander Allison Drake invented what became known as shadow tactics. Her ships would hide among asteroids and debris fields, waiting silently while Vorn convoys passed by. Then they would strike without warning, destroying supply vessels and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The machines could not adapt to enemies who refused to fight fair. Engineer Kyle Tanner saved countless lives with his inventions. He discovered that Vorn ships communicated using a specific signal frequency. His jamming devices could disrupt that signal, turning a coordinated enemy fleet into a confused collection of individual vessels that could not work together. What had been impossible battles became winnable because of his work. But the most important battle came in the 6th year of the war. At Vareth Prime. Vareth Prime was the ancient capital of the Galactic Council, a world that had been the center of civilization for over 10,000 years. The Vorn had chosen it as their primary target, gathering their largest fleet for one massive attack. If Vareth Prime fell, the war would effectively be over. The machines would control the heart of the galaxy, and nothing would be able to stop them. Admiral Marcus Webb commanded the combined defense fleet. For the first time in history, human and council ships fought side by side as equals. The council forces had learned from watching the humans over the past years. They had abandoned their old methods and adopted new ones. They were still not as aggressive as the Rim pilots, but they were no longer helpless. All ships, this is Admiral Webb, Marcus transmitted as the Vorn Armada emerged from hyperspace. The enemy fleet was enormous, thousands of black shapes blocking out the stars behind them. They told us we did not belong among the stars. They said we were too young and too dangerous. Today, we proved that what they called our weaknesses are actually our greatest strengths. All ships, attack. The battle lasted 18 hours. Ships were destroyed by the hundreds on both sides. The space above Vareth Prime filled with explosions and burning wreckage. The Vorn pushed forward with mechanical determination. The Allied fleet held the line with desperate courage. The turning point came when Major Grace Sullivan led a boarding team onto the Vorn command vessel. Intelligence reports had revealed that the machine intelligence was controlled by a central processing unit. Destroy that unit, and the entire Vorn fleet would lose coordination. Grace was 45 years old. Born and raised in the Rim, she had fought in more battles than she could count and carried scars from wounds that would have killed most people. Fear was something she had never learned. Her team fought through the Vorn ship level by level, cutting through automated defenses and mechanical soldiers. They lost people at every step, but they kept moving forward. Grace was wounded twice, but she refused to stop or slow down. When they finally reached the central processing unit, only Grace and 2 young soldiers remained. The unit was a massive structure of black metal and pulsing energy, the brain that controlled everything the Vorn did. Set the explosives, Grace ordered. Her soldiers placed charges around the processing unit while Grace held off the last wave of machine defenders. A piece of shrapnel hit her in the side. She fell to one knee, but kept firing her weapon. Charges are ready, one soldier reported. Then go. Get back to the shuttle. Get back to the shuttle. I will trigger the explosion. Major, you cannot survive if you stay here. Grace looked at the 2 young soldiers, barely more than children. They had their whole lives ahead of them. She had already lived hers. I know. Now go. That is an order. They hesitated, but military training won. They ran for the shuttle while Grace turned to face the processing unit. She could hear more machines coming. She would not have long. She waited until she was certain the soldiers had escaped, then pressed the trigger. The explosion destroyed the processing unit and everything around it, including Grace Sullivan. But her sacrifice was not wasted. The Vorn fleet lost all coordination. Ships that had been working together as one machine suddenly became separate units, confused and vulnerable. The Allied forces attacked with everything they had left, and within hours, the remaining Vorn were destroyed. The war was over. When the Galactic Council met again, the chamber looked different. Human delegates sat among the elder races, their presence not just accepted but honored. President Claire Donovan stood at the center. Where criminals had once been judged and humanity had once been condemned, High Arbiter Vethros, ancient and humbled, spoke first. We were wrong, he admitted. We feared what we did not understand. We punished your ambition because we had lost our own. Humanity has proven that the qualities we condemned are the very qualities that saved us all. We offer our deepest apology and our eternal gratitude." Claire looked around the chamber at the alien faces that had once seemed so terrifying. They did not look frightening anymore. They just looked tired. "We do not need apologies," she said. "We do not want revenge. What we want is what we have always wanted. A place among the stars that we earned through our own work and sacrifice. The rim made us strong. Now let us make the galaxy stronger together." The council voted to remove the banishment and welcome humanity back as full members. But the humans who had conquered the outer rim did not need permission. They had already proven themselves. 50 years after the exile, the grandchildren of refugees walked through the galaxy not as victims, but as victors. Human ships traveled everywhere. Human colonies grew on worlds that others had declared impossible. And on Haven, in the Central Plaza, a statue stood in memory of Admiral Daniel Hayes, his hand raised toward the stars. The inscription read simply, "They told us to leave. We built an empire instead." The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Not then, not now, not ever.